Let the record state that is the sound that plays in my brain whenever I'm walking down the street or in a hallway by myself. So people might think I'm nuts, but like dun 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 dun. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know.
Oh, well, that's the good of this. Like,
hey, if you have a theme song for yourself, I think that's wonderful.
I didn't say a theme song. I said it's the music that plays in my head.
Gotcha.
I just wanted to articulate that when I was creating the beat for FranX. So, okay. So this week we're doing Ask Us Anything again. We did this on the first run since we've shifted this over to a webinar to invite our audience live onto these things. And what we're going to do on this round, which now that I'm looking at the broadcast, it didn't go live into LinkedIn, so whatever. You get a more of an exclusive look on this thing, but we'll make it count. So one topic, I'll kick us off because I read something and it pissed me off, and not in a bad way, and it has nothing to do with what the two of you think we're going to talk about. But let me frame this. There's this email that came out by Franchise Times, and this is where the media, and look, if we got into politics, the media and their viewpoint on things is clear. We could have a discussion about this, but it's interesting when media hits franchising. And so this email came out and it said, Crumble Cookies AUVs are going down. And I read that and I go, yeah, no shit, because when you've already sold so many and opened, frankly, they've done a good job at opening, you've opened all these top tier markets, you're on to the secondary markets. And so when I'm reading this, I'm like, of course the unit level economics are gonna be impacted because they're starting to go into markets that won't have the same density of population. And so I thought about that, I read it, it intrigued me, and I wanted to bring it up as a topic this week. And specifically for Charles on your viewpoint on this, because I don't like, and they also said they're closing stores. Well, let me say a statement on that, and then I'll shut up for a second. On the closing the stores, if franchisee X, candidate X comes in and is like, whatever Crumble's AUVs are, $2 million. And you come in and you're like, here's our AUV, and you sell on AUVs, and then you open and you're only doing, let's say, $1 million, you're like, the sky's fallen. It's not, I didn't do the 2 million that I expected to do. And so issue one is setting expectations as a franchisor and using your numbers properly to also set the expectation. Like you're not a pioneer in this brand. You're going to a secondary location. Secondly, I think, and even more importantly, looking at net profitability, that I think net profitability has to be in your item 19, because at $1.5 million, if you're paying less on real estate or you're in a different state, like state of Utah, where the cost of living is less than that of, say, living in Chicago, there's going to be variance there. And you might actually be more profitable on $1.5 million in Utah than $2 million in Chicago. And so I say all this that I feel like the news story of Crumble's AUVs going down is somewhat misleading. And then because of expectation setting, they're somewhat misleading. And then really looking at state-by-state breakdown of profitability, there's going to be variance in it based on what your rent is. So that's a throw up of words. But Charles or Brent, comments on that?
I think you're right. The primary reason is the secondary territories, for sure. I also think it doesn't speak to what we see in every brand that starts to grow quickly, in that once you hit that growth curve, and let's take a look to see if this is true in my memory, but once you hit that growth curve, you have less stores that are mature and more new stores that are opening. If you have more new stores that are opening than mature stores, then absolutely your AUVs are going to go down. It's going to take them a year or 2 or 3 to reach that same point of maturation. So, I mean, I don't know. I suspect, let's look, Crumble Entrepreneur. Okay, so from 2020, here we go. From 2020 to 2022, they had 100 open stores in 2020. By 2022, they went to 540 open stores. So you got 100 stores in that 2020 to 2022 range that you can build an item 19 off. Then you open 300. You have 300 versus 100 that were open. That's going to bring that AUV down. That is not a story that's franchising.
I mean, just a lack of, I mean, from the journalism perspective, and again, I didn't read the article, but it could be a little superficial. Brent's point, I mean, item 19 wise, well, to both of your points, um, Crumble would probably have AUV data for outlets open 2 or more years, right? So you could filter through the data that Brent just shared. Um, and then I think from a compelling standpoint, if you could show some type of cash flow calculation, because to show that secondary locations, maybe they're not generating the same sales, but they're still producing healthy profitability margins. Well, then that's the deeper dive to the story, right? Which is, have the margin levels changed, and what do AUVs look like when you evaluate mature locations?
Yeah, I think the true story here is how brand goes from Darling to Target on their back, and I think this happens a lot in franchising when it goes beyond, say, a PR team's control. Like obviously we're in the PR business, so we're going to lift up a brand and tell the great story. If the PR stops because, let's just say, brand X used PR for lead generation, they're like, oh, we sold enough franchise, now we don't need PR. You actually need PR more. But sometimes then there's this shift of Darling to now let's come at you and let's try to call you out because we think you became too popular too fast. And I mean, this happens in life. It happens in popularity contests. It happens in everything. Like we as human beings celebrate the drama just as much as we celebrate the celebration. Like we like both sides of the equation. So in this scenario, though, I mean, I look at it and say I still think Crumble's a good brand. Like my questions would be, are they hiring corporate support team at the pace of what they're opening? And if the answer is yes, so let's say you open up that additional 300 locations, but you added 100 corporate staff to go support that, knowing that you're then going to go from 500 to 700 to 1,000, then I'm all for that. And again, like when AUVs is such a bullshit number because it's going to be so specific to the state that you live in or the city that you live in and on what your cost of labor. If you're in California, you're paying $20 minimum wage, your Crumble is going to possibly be less profitable than a city that's paying $15 an hour for that same labor pool. So it's like, it's confusing. And then to a franchise buyer, because we don't educate franchise buyers on what franchising is, they chase the lottery ticket. So they're just constantly looking at that big number and not breaking down the details.
Why do you think? So you said, listen, they got big. There was a lot of popularity. They were the darling, and then they get to that tipping point where they have a target on their back, and you see that, to your point, a lot in franchising. What do you think it is about the human psychology for us that we get to that point where we want to see the celebrity suffer a little bit, or why do you think that happens, Mr. PR guy?
It's jealousy, right? I mean, that's it. Like we become jealous of those that make it. I mean, I'll say this for our own business. When we figure out a way to be more than a PR agency, and obviously created other things, and it's not, I don't want to sell our businesses on here, but from a story standpoint, once we got up to the top, then the hatred for our businesses accelerated, and therefore the target on our company's back heated up. Now the saying is, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. So you have to sometimes weather some of those storms. So Crumble now at this point in a world of jealousy, because Crumble 2020 next to nothing to now explosive, the jealousy is just so high. And now you got to be very careful. Like I think the jump the shark moment for Crumble is they're like, oh shit, we gotta now create a new product. They're gonna launch, ice cream. Like you can't jump the shark. You have to stay course, innovate around your product, continue to tighten up your solutions around your core that got you here. Don't get distracted. And then typically when private equity gets involved, that's where distractions happen, because now you're driving P&Ls. You're not driving the core anymore. So anyway, long-winded to say, my viewpoint is pure jealousy. I think pure jealousy is the evil of every dagger that's thrown in this world.
I really like that question, Brent. And Nick, I don't disagree, but I also think there's a level of concern, right? So I think from a paternalistic standpoint, if I'm going to attribute good intentions to why is such a negative headline so appealing or interesting to people, is there maybe some people that are worried, like, is this a sign that the growth was too quick? And are individuals going to be hurt? And I happen to think it's a great business and hope everyone thrives. So I think there's also an element of concern, because what Crumble's done, not only is it not easy and unusual, there's a high level of execution there to make it all work, right? And so the people, the non-believers, the people that haven't achieved that high level, we're talking now at like hitting the level of an iconic brand, right? In many ways. So I guess there's some jealousy, but there's also doubt by people that haven't like traveled that and don't understand it. So I guess that could be negative also. But that question did strike me, right? Because it's like, I don't want to believe it's just jealousy, but I guess there's an element there.
Well, I think you're right, and we can talk about other buzz terms like responsible franchising later. But look, at the end of the day, kudos to a brand like that. You pumped up your volumes. You had lines out the door. If you go into like the burger category, the lines out the door brand, Shake Shack, kept it all corporate. And there's always that argument, like, why go franchising if you have to? Like, stay corporate. And maybe that should have been the Crumble story. Shame on Crumble for naming their brand Crumble. Like, you just set up the word that's going to be in every headline when your sales go down. Like, shame on you. You should have picked a different brand name. Just kidding. But yeah, I mean, like, unfortunately, franchisees buy quite often unicorns, and the unicorns come in the form of an item 19. And Charles, that's the side that would scare me here, is if someone bought in thinking they can flip on these lights, not work hard. I mean, the Crumble right by me, my house opens up at 8 a.m. I think their hours are 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Like, that's brutal for a cookie brand. Like, that's a lot. And it's a very expensive real estate play that they went into. And frankly, I've watched since not since I've lived here, but when our office was right next door to it, like, I've watched 4 businesses come in out of that space and close. So is the franchisee set up for success? I don't know. And that's the scary part of that, Any other comments on Crumble? Let's put up Kirk's comment. We already work with Charles and Nick. Brent, let's not talk about ashes. Okay, so we have already sold our first franchise and spent $0 on marketing. It was luck. It was luck in the sense that we found an incredible candidate, and it was a bizarre set of circumstances. We had her operational in 6 weeks, and she's doing extremely well. So my question: top 5 tips to finding the first 5 franchisees. Great SEO placement. Who wants to go first? Top 5 tips to finding your first 5 franchisees.
We talked about this a couple times on this podcast. I don't think it was luck at all, my friend. I think you did it the right way. And we've advised on this show before, there's no need to go spend a lot, some cases, any money in marketing for the first 5. We all have the power of organic reach. We all have LinkedIn and Twitter and ways to advertise it. We have our customer database that we can use. You can have customers that love the product or the service, that have the skill sets and the passion and the culture fit to be a franchisee. And there's a lot of ways to start there. That's just pure grunt work to find people that know the brand, love the brand. Go out, find those, continue on the path you are. Just do the work and sing in the story of the brand, whether, again, that's through social media, by dialing your Rolodex, by asking a friend of a friend. We find that those first 3 to 5 are often best found through your personal network, for you just rolling up your sleeves and telling the brand story. Charles and Nick have done a really good job before in talking about, if you are going to invest in the first 3 to 5, do so in the collateral, in the tools, in the story itself, whether that's a great franchise website, videos, presentations, or maybe even a little PR if you wanted to start there. But that's usually a better place is to invest in your own brand and your own story before just going and buying leads. And Charles, I know you talk better to that than I do.
And I agree with your points, and Brent, I agree too. Kirk, it wasn't by accident, right? It turns out when he's engaging in this conversation, however, he engaged this franchisee. He's a substantive person. His franchise system is substantive. And so it turns out that with a franchisor or new franchisor that's not as prepared in terms of the conversation, how the franchise fits in, what it can do for them, then that connection that's so random would have never converted. So Kirk has a lot in place in terms of foundation. Which I think instead of 5, I agree with Brent's points. I think Kirk's business is a mobile, lower startup cost, children's enrichment activity type business. So for me, if I'm Kirk, I would do exactly what your advice, Brent, which is keep bolstering the website and the brand story. And then added to that, I would join a smaller franchise broker group, not one filled with flash, but one that's going to have a substantive relationship. And I would start
franchisesites.com.
No, I would start building up in a good broker network.
I like when Charles puts the little dagger in there. I gotta call it out. He's like, not one of those flashy brokerages. Go with one of the nice, kind ones. They know who you're talking about. I know who you're talking about. All right. What was that?
I mean, if they know who they're talking about, then I can't,
Yes.
I don't know. I'm not talking about anyone, actually.
All right. Here, five tips. That's what Kurt asked for. I'm going to give 5 tips. Charles, actually, both of you may disagree with this. Tip number 1, keep your franchise fee low. It drives me nuts when I see franchise fees of $45,000. I'm not done. Let me do my tips, and then you can fight me. I will give you a great case study. Kevin Wilson, CEO formerly of Mosquito Joe, they sold the brand. When Kevin got in, he was a PE guy that got into the business and knew nothing about franchising, like in the traditional sense. And so he did almost everything opposite. So he kept the franchise fee very low. He took a big portion of that and popped additional capital back into marketing. And he created a support model that really got the franchisee to profitable as fast as humanly possible. Like that's what the engine was, because he was looking at a traditional business. He was able to now sell enough that when he was ready for the broker network and increase the fee, obviously, to pay the brokers, it made sense with where he was in his life cycle. I understand the fees being high, but when you're giving out a big chunk of that back to the broker network, it's not capitalizing the business. So here is my opinion. Keep the franchise fee low. When McDonald's franchise fee is $45,000, when I see an emerging brand have a $45,000 franchise fee, I'm like, you're not going to support the way that McDonald's is, or we need to change the name what a franchise fee is, because I think it should be small in the beginning stages. This is to get five done, and again, we don't always have to agree on these things, and you can criticize me in a second. 1, don't make one. That was 1. Number 2, don't make 1 penny. Every single dollar you make goes back into your franchisee's marketing. Think of them as if you get 1, that's a billboard. And if you throw every dollar that you possibly have as a human being, because you're investing in the long term of this business to make that franchisee successful, it's your own capital. I get it, but you're making them successful. So you're throwing cash their way, and you're basically trying to engineer a marketing strategy that you can deploy when you have more units. Incentivize expansion would be number 3, whatever it takes. Like, hey, if you get your next franchisee 1, you get your next unit open in the next 6 months, we'll give you 0 royalty for X period of time. And Charles can step in there and disagree on some of those things in a second. But you got to go big, because scaling franchisees is eventually what's going to help you on that exit. Number 4, you want to build out your tech stack, overinvest in the tech stack, and make sure it's one that you are super proud about. Don't skimp on your website. Don't skip on your Google My Business. Like, over invest all those additional dollars that you have beyond what you're throwing into that franchisee, build out the tech stack. And sometimes that's just vetting out the vendors so that you make this very easy for your franchisees to operate. And number 5, scream it from the rooftops. If you are capitalized, invest in PR and social media. If you are not capitalized at this point and you're bootstrapping it, then just pick up the phone and call every media person, every blogger. In your case, Kirk, you should be calling every mother in the market possible that could put up a Facebook post and say, hey, we'll give you a free class if you put up a Facebook post. Like, get the buzz going, and you can do that without engaging in a PR firm. Those are my 5 tips. Now, Charles, you can come at me.
No, I agree with them. The franchise fee, the issue I have with the franchise fee, I'm not, so I don't have Kirk's FDD in front of me, but if I'm a mobile supplemental income replacement business, and I may be selling multi-territory, I don't want to be so low, because the concern with a mobile low startup cost business, if you don't have the filter of a high enough franchise fee, you may be onboarding franchisees that aren't going to be a good fit and they won't be committed. So I have a concern there with the lower startup cost businesses, because that to me shows commitment. Now, I would keep that fee and I would reinvest it in the franchisee and everything you're saying. Second is, for Kirk's industry, in my opinion, franchise brokers initially should be a very significant factor for franchise sales, just the nature of his industry. And then, adding to that would be, you need compelling media. So after those broker meetings and whatnot, you have a really clear discovery process, videos, and then and demonstrate all the things that you were bringing up, Nick, about the tech stack, how we help you, what it means. And so that's where I would go.
Brent, before I come back to it.
By the way, guys, here on this advice that I just gave, I've never sold a franchise in my life, so I don't know if anyone should listen to my advice.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm the opposite, right? So when we started Voodoo with one franchisee, we charged a franchise fee of $75,000. But we jam-packed that $75,000 full of value. We started the franchise support team with 9 individuals for 2 franchisees. We did all the things that you mentioned, and then there's a whole supply chain thing that goes into it with beer and whatnot. So it's a little different, but we still sold significantly to the right people in the first year or 2. It can be done, and in some cases it should be done. I think that it depends. It depends on so much, and you had some variables in there. Let me ask, Nick, what's low franchise fee to you? What's your advice to Kurt? What would you tell him to set it at?
Well, first, let me say that you are the exception to the rule. Let me be very clear. Like, there are not a lot of Brents in franchise. In fact, I don't know that there's any, because you just said we created value for what that $70,000 is. 99% of franchise brands don't. They use that to go get broker deals, or they use it to finance their own business and keep the lights on. Like, the reality is you are a super exception to the rule, but you can see that in your history as a franchisee, a franchisor, or an entrepreneur. Like, you have the millionaire mindset. Most don't. Most have like a $100,000 mindset. So let me be clear on that. Low franchise fee. Let me be clear. I agree with Charles. Like, you need a governor on to know who you say yes to and who you say no to. But there's a very important thing here that I would do. I would make the franchise fee $5,000. Now, Charles is like, you're crazy. But I would make your grand opening commitment that is in escrow back to you as a franchisor is 40. So I'm not saying get the investment lower. I'm saying deploy the resources in a different way and set up the infrastructure to be super focused on franchisee success. Unless you are Brent, capitalize, gonna overinvest in your team to go support that franchisee. Totally buy into that. High franchise fee, keep it 70. I think Brent should probably have done 100. Like, there's no way a startup brewer could open up a business and have that depth of experience for $70,000. I just couldn't. So I say that. I'm just saying, like, don't discount your total investment. Get the fee at 5. Now, my statement on the broker network, the thing to be careful with is, it is what it is, and you guys can certainly disagree with me, but you say no to a broker, you get axed out. Like, they're never going to send you a deal again. And so it actually sets you up in the wrong way, because if you say no to a franchise broker, they're like, how dare you say no to my candidates? Because they want to get paid, because it's all backwards right now. Yeah, if there are good franchise brokers out there that are not a part of a brokerage, that are independents, totally go into that. If you say, hey broker, if I say no to your candidate, are you gonna knock me out? They're like, no, like make sure you have the right person. Great. But that's my fear on the broker side for an emerging brand is you're handcuffed by their bullshit. And therefore, you may say yes to the wrong person automatically because of the pressures of an outside broker. Says, I have all the experience of the world in franchising. This person is going to do great. Trust your gut and let your gut protect your business.
Well, and that's a good point too in this calculation, right? Of should you have it low, and if so, what's the strategy? Because if you aren't capitalized in this scenario and elect to have a low franchise fee to attract franchisees, you're not going to get shown by the brokers in the first place. That's an ugly secret of this industry. Most of them, not all of them, there's a ton of really good ones that match great candidates with the right brand, no matter the fee. My experience is that most of them will look to make sure there's a certain threshold, which is now around 35,000 per referral, no matter the quality or the match of the brand. And that's an unfortunate part of our industry right now. And it's slightly changing. And there are a lot of really good brokers that don't operate that way. But if you are looking to say, okay, yes, I'm not going to capitalize, I'm going to keep it low, I'm going to enter the broker network or the consultant networks, you're not going to get shown.
Wait, Charles, I have one comment on that real quick. I'm just fast on the trigger. I obviously talk way too much. I don't think $35,000 is a bad commission to pay. Let me be clear on this. It's that if a franchise broker is honest about it and says, look, the franchise fee is what it is. Like the history of franchising has changed. It used to be how we support you, and today it's franchisee acquisition. Like that's the cost of the franchisor finding you. Therefore, you're going to pay the franchisor this fee, and I get that commission off of it because I'm working with you. So I am a paid coach. I am paid as a part of this process. I'm not going to act like I'm unpaid by you. I am paid through this $35,000. When you look at how much is going to kick off of royalty, and I like to look at 3 years because it's just like a franchisee. I would advise, like, can you pay off your complete investment over a 3-year period? Then it's a good investment. Same with a franchisor. 3 years royalty, if it equals $35,000, then that's an okay commission because the amount of money that candidate's going to be worth to you in the long term beyond that, not in the next 7 years of royalty, but also at exit, is so tremendous. And so I do think the broker should get paid that much money. I just think they should be more transparent in it, and they shouldn't push the wrong candidates into the wrong brands.
Charles, you're deep in thought there. I can see it.
Yeah, because yeah, it's funny. I'm actually I'm listening and thinking about this. It's a good conversation. Like I don't want to go too far into it because I think it's all covered. In this case, it really, you have to look at a lower startup cost, and this just being an example. In this case, a mobile lower startup cost business, there's no brick and mortar. This is all about a franchisee following systems, building relationships. And so the franchisee and the quality of that franchisee is so critical. And for a brand like Kirk and these other businesses, it's not so easy to make those connections with those quality people. Plus, some of them are not, they're maybe supplemental income, not income replacement yet. So I do think for working with the right broker, if they could fit you with that right candidate, I'd pay that fee every time because it's, you're in this case for that franchise buyer, success is not just about economics. It's also about the mission, how this fits in supplemental income. Can it get to income replacement? There's a lot there. So but ultimately I think Kirk should just keep doing what he does. He's got a great personality. He's got a great brand. For sure, I'd work with the right brokers. I think they could help sell. But these are all good questions or good thoughts.
Yeah, I think franchising is more complex than go to market, get a lead, close a deal, and I think that's the tone of this.
Yeah, and look, my opinion would be very different if we're talking about a retail business, a restaurant, if we're talking about someone buying a business because it has to be income replacement on day one. It just for me is going to vary depending on the opportunity, based on all my franchise sales experience.
So, Charles, what is your current opinion on this new buzz term, responsible franchising?
I have no opinion. I don't. I think it's great. I think if we're going to be responsible or talk about responsible franchising, for me, what that means is to, like, I had a very candid conversation with someone. So we do a lot of franchise development, franchising your business. And they said to me, Charles, this person, great person, nice guy, genuine goals. Let's say he's in I guess it's not bad, but to say, so they sell ices and it happens to be a hometown favorite location. And one of his comments was, I spoke to a large development company and they said, gee, when he's evaluating these, should I franchise? They said, well, you know what? Unlike pizza and other stuff, there's not a lot of ice franchises. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Right? Because is that the advice someone would have given a Five Guys? Don't franchise because there's a ton of burger joints. And does that mean you're going to succeed because theoretically there aren't? No, it's irrelevant. My advice to him was, look, here, I'll tell you the reality. If you franchise and you're focused on 5 years and you understand you're not going to earn a profit for at least 3 years, and it's an uphill pull, and you're focused on a hub and spoke model locally, so there's brand recognition, and you're going to over support, tell me 3 years from now how many franchisees you have, their cash flow positive, what their profits are. I'll tell you how we could grow. And I will also tell you it is irrelevant whether someone thinks there's a lot of ice franchises or not. So to me, responsible franchising is having those candid conversations on the franchise development space, which I think there's a lot of irresponsibility with certain development companies. And if you're listening, please come on our live stream. I'd love to have a conversation about that. On the other stuff, look, on sales, responsible, and it's not just about sales, right? It's also about, are you selling to your support level and your capability to support and make franchisees successful? I'm sorry. I went from no opinion to that's my opinion.
I was just going to say it. I mean, I have a feeling back in law school, some like attorney with a large mustache and a giant gray comb over said, Charles, the secret to being a successful lawyer is you say something and then you do the opposite, because then you've just disclosed it. Like you're like, in confidentiality, and then you tell what the confidential thing is, but you said, like, I'm being confidential about it. Like, I think that's where that came from. No? Yeah? No? Good tactic? Brent, what do you think about this responsible franchising thing?
Oh, I think it's important, and I think it's a good conversation to have. I think it's probably a little too overcooked right now. I think it's interesting. I was thinking about the crumble thing, and I wonder if there's some analogies there and some similarities between crumble having a target on its back due to what we all decided was jealousy. When I look at responsible franchising, is nothing new. It's good brands have been responsible in franchising for a long time, like good franchise consultants have, and then there's been bad actors, and that's every industry ever. There's responsible and irresponsible sales, and it happens, right? But why has it been brought to the limelight in the last, what we'd say, 12 months? And I've been thinking about that. And I think that if you look at the certain players driving the majority of that conversation right now, I think a lot of them have competition in FSOs. And I'm saying it obviously biased as one that's involved, as a guy that's involved with one, but you look at what FSOs were able to do in the last 3-5 years and really get very efficient in selling franchises and really almost monopolize some of the franchise consultant networks, but do it in a very efficient way. And that probably meant less deals for others. And I think that others are also happens to be the folks that are driving the responsible franchising. So if they are able to restrict the ability or draw some negative attention to the crumble of franchise sales right now, does that help them? I think it does. And is that a reason as to why they want to do it? Maybe So I look at that and I wonder, right? But ultimately, I'm a big proponent of it. It's been in the mission statement for Raintree for the last 7 years, is to responsibly drive franchise sales, and we try to deliver on that. It's just interesting to me, and I'm trying to figure it out. I got like that one theory there, but it's certainly blown up in the last 12 months. And Nick, I don't know if you've got a theory on why.
I think it's a mask for the bullshit, but it is a very important thing. So, I mean, I've seen this happen so many times. Emerging franchisor lands at an IFA, gets invited to the parties, drinks beer, and is like, wow, I love this stuff. And the people that are buying the beer are like, you need to buy this, and you need to be part of this, and we're going to lift you up here. And then the second they struggle or can't afford those services, they're like, look, I need to take a break. Now they're blacklisted and they're no longer invited to the parties and on the boards, and until they land at another brand because they go get another job, and then they're invited back because they have the money again. Unfortunately, I've seen this happen too many times in the last 12 months. Money changes a lot. And so I think the term responsible franchising right now is a mask. And I think the mask is very dangerous because whether it's an emerging franchisor or it's a first-time franchise owner, we're using it almost as like the equivalent of don't get into that weird white van that pulls up to your school and offers you candy. Like that's what this is. Now, what it stands for, though, I think is tremendous, and it should be the case. So, like, if I break it down to trying to define what I think responsible franchising is, I think it's honest disclosures on all fronts. I think it's helping your buyer and eventually your franchisee create a plan to scale and a plan to exit, because that's the beauty of franchising. I think it's creating a support model that supports the franchisee at pace. So, like a Kirk, for instance, he's not going to make as much royalty as say a Voodoo because the gross sales are widely different. So that could be like one support to every 5 or one support to every 10. I mean, I just went on Crumble's LinkedIn page just because I was curious, and it's hard because it says they have 10,000 employees. It's hard because, if you work in a store, it doesn't break it down by corporate employees or such. But then I just clicked on what do they do, and like 34% are in operations. That's the bulk of who they're hiring. That seems to be a positive thing. How do you operate the relationship with the client, and how do you represent or operationalize the relationship with the franchisee? But I think and we've heard this and we've seen this so many times in core values, like just do the right thing. That's what it needs to stand for. I think right now and it's not going to change. Like we celebrate sold. We don't celebrate scaling the right way. I've talked about a pathway to 100. 1 unit open, 2 units the next year, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 100. It's a 7-year growth plan to get to 100 units so that you can scale properly. Most brands start off and say, I'm going to have 100 next year. And I don't know if that sets it up right unless you are reinvesting in the business. And so the most magical piece, I think, to responsible franchising is proper capitalization. And so if you're an emerging franchisor and you don't have the money to now go support and grow, then just don't use the word responsible franchising. You're not there yet. And you don't have to be it on day one. You can grow it to be this. And my hope and dream is that someday Charles creates a business that can give a stamp of approval to those that are deemed to be doing this the right way. And unfortunately, there's no true governing body of franchising. Like even the law at the state level doesn't really govern it, or else like there are brands that have exploded and sold on false numbers and hurt a lot of people's lives that just wouldn't be allowed to be registered as a franchise. You would be denied. Like you do not fit the tone of this. So I mean, look, it's a marketing term for right now. Hopefully it takes some definition as time goes forward.
And I think you're right. It's at the core is it's just doing the right thing in franchising, and more than just wondering how it all started. And I've seen some of the proposed legislation changes for California, and there's some interesting stuff there, and I'm all about it, right? Like, I think that it is time we start to regulate a little bit more. But here's where I think the focus should be, rather than just talking about what that means to do it right. There's no scoring mechanism for it right now. So, to speak frankly, the FSO that I'm involved with right now, Fastlane, they're the crumble of FSO, right? They've got the target on their back. And I was just curious as somebody new to that world and thought, well, let me go see, since there's blame being thrown there and there's accusations being thrown there, let me just go read all the FDDs and item 20s and see what they look like for these brands that have been there for a while. And I was able to derive thus far, it's about a 90% open rate after 3 years. And I thought, wow, sounds good. Is it good? Let me go see. Surely there's data. There's not. The last study I could find, and granted, I didn't do a ton of time, but it was 1994. A guy surveyed 20,000 franchise businesses. He found that 60% were open after 4 years. But there's no scoring mechanism for what it means to actually, well, yeah, you said you did the right thing, but what was the result? How do we start to measure failure rates for brands? What's a registry for that? We've got some SBA stuff, but nothing official. And I think that's where we probably should put some attention of, all right, rather than just talk about what we think is the right thing, how do we start measuring what actually happened before we start blaming certain folks, certain brokers, certain FSOs, certain brands? Let's get some data involved before we start pointing fingers, because I think it's fair. But ultimately, I think it's a good conversation to have, and I think it's time we brought it to the light, and it's a good thing.
The only thing I would add is, and I know we're all on the same page, which is I think we could be critical and evaluate this, and these things come up because there's been so much success, right? So I work with clients all the time. Our clients passionately care about what's being done for their franchisees, right? And so they're the epitome of responsible, and they are changing lives. One of Brent's brands, with the founder who, we were having lunch and got a text, hey, thank you for franchising. I go, what's that? He goes, he texts me every month thanking me that I did this and how it's transformed his life. So it's sort of like the dumb college students right now protesting capitalism from their iPhones and not realizing, they're where they're at because of capitalism and all this. So it's nice to be a little critical when you're benefiting from this ecosystem. So I'd say, overall, there's been a tremendous uplift from, franchising, which is no different from any other business model. It's business and it's relationships. So, I don't know. I think I just want to talk about the dumb college students, but that's
what is interesting, like it goes back to the start of our conversation on Crumble. Like ultimately,
yeah, like
this is the defense, and unfortunately, it is what it is. Like if you are a bad franchisor, and you know.
Well, but Nick, and Franchise Times isn't sitting there with the 15-unit franchisee who's now planning out generational estate plans because they invested in Crumble, right?
And hustled. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I think, but like if the heat, if you're a bad franchisor and you say, we're responsible at franchising, and FranX was criticizing us, they're going to say, they're just jealous. which is a fair point. Why did we not create this? We wish we had done that. I will say, like, in full transparency, not full transparency, in most transparency, there's a client that Charles works with that fired us. I was definitely pissed about it because I rewrote the plan for this brand that fired us. However, they're using the broker network to grow. And they've gone from 0 to 12 very fast. I think they're actually doing it in a responsible way. They capitalize the business. They set up the support structures. They revise their business strategy. They have a game plan. You can see in all his pictures, he's going there for the openings. Like he's doing it the right way, but he's doing it through the broker network. So the broker network doesn't mean irresponsible franchising. It just means build the infrastructure to change people's lives, and then get those text messages. So I just throw this on here. Support. Gene says, we always hear about this in the franchise world. Can you give us some specifics or guidelines for what this really means? Anybody want to go first?
Well, the inverse of support is you'll hear from franchisees for brands that don't offer it is I never hear from the franchisor. It's dictatorial of things that they want to roll out. You can feel the culture of it's very much about the brand and us as the ZOR rather than the best interests of the Z. So it's a very broad question, but what it really means is the brand franchisee focused on the success of the franchisee more so than themselves potentially, or are they focused on driving the P&L and the bottom line of the franchisor entity at the cost of franchisees? And those types of brands are usually reactive to problems. They're not proactive to reaching out. There's a long list of things there, but ultimately that's what we see. It's just a difference in mentality. You're either about support and about franchisees making money and being happy over anything else, or you're about the opposite of that, which is usually a symptom of a lack of support.
Yeah. So for Gene too, emerging franchisors, I would recommend taking the word support and throwing it out the window, because everyone could use it's almost like a buzz term. Everyone says it. You'll go to every conference where the big, enlightenment is you need to support franchisees, right? Take that away because it's a crutch. And you know what needs to be done to make your franchisees successful, to make them understand what it's like when they buy a franchise, how you're going to make them successful, how you're going to assist them. I won't use the word support along the way, what KPIs they should be looking at to gauge their success, and how you help them achieve those KPIs. What technology, what tools, whatever. Focused on the items of deliverables that form this word. Because what happens is then we get lost and we get paralyzed and we're like, we're going to provide support, but it's this amorphous big thing. Start writing down those tangible steps, because what'll happen also, it's going to turn out you're going to differentiate your website, your marketing, you're going to have real conversations, and you're going to create attraction to your brand.
I think through two things when I hear the question. There's no blueprint. Let me be clear. When I book a reservation for a restaurant on OpenTable, I do it on an app. I get a reminder. I'll get a text message that says, hey, can you confirm your reservation? Push 1, or if not, push 2. When I show up at the restaurant, there's someone there to guide me to the table. I wouldn't know where the table is. When I sit down, I'm handed a menu. Oftentimes the waiter will say, or waitress will say, here's what I would recommend, or here are the specials. I then place my order. They bring it to the table. Hopefully it's hot and good. I have a good experience. They ask me if I would like another drink. I go through dessert. I have my coffee. I pay the bill. I feel good about it. I leave a tip and I walk away. That experience, you want to leave your franchisees feeling like they should have paid you more. What is the tip that they want to give? And if you use that as a guiding light, I think it wins. I'm going to give a throw out to Charles. He does a fantastic job. Like, my perception, I'm not a client of Charles's, but you get this box in the mail that says Entrepreneurs Kick Ass. You open it up, there's a t-shirt in there that's celebrating you. That's him saying, like, we appreciate you as a client. He's building technology solutions, FranIQ, so that you can navigate your FTD. He's adding these things in. His team does traction, and they're trying to build more support for their franchisors so that they want to do more with him. When you go to events, he picks up the tab. You could even sell your business and he'll still buy you a steak dinner if you don't say thank you to him. Like, there's all these things that he does, but it's because he's trying to get that tip. He wants people left feeling like, I want to tip you, Charles, not in reality. But I think that's if you feel that, give so much that you get a Christmas present or you get a thank you card. Like, have that be it, and then build your program off of that. Typically, though, in franchising, because of expectations of the franchise, it comes down to, is your franchisees making money or not? And that's how your program should be built. It's all about helping them make money.
And Gene, for your stage, I think from memory we've talked, or I know the brand, but you're a smaller concept. When you're in that growth phase, whether that's 0 to 5 or 5 to 25, a lot of it is just about how much grunt work you want to put into each Z yourself. Here's an example. I'm a franchisee in a doggy daycare franchise. They have 100 plus franchisees. There was an issue with an employee at our location, and the location is central to some of the corporate staff. So there's some mutual interest there, but nonetheless, not the founder's problem that my store there had some big customer issues. She's been flying in from New York to Denver for 3-4 days a week when she has a staff of people. She has 90 other franchisees she worries about, and she gets in there and she's working that business for us. And it's obviously an anomaly in franchising. I've never seen it before. I'm still in awe of just how much drive and passion, the commitment she has to every single, making sure that she can do anything she can to get every single store across the line or give them a bump. And that's just the mentality of a winning, support-focused franchisor. It doesn't just stop after 3 franchisees think, oh, I got a team now, they'll figure it out. If she sees an opportunity to make a difference, she'll roll up the sleeves and get it done. And that's something I think is admirable and something to strive for as franchisors in this industry.
I think this is going to be a topic for a later time, but I want to say this line. In my opinion, whoever does your franchise sales should also be a part of that support journey. And I think most commissions are paid at the point of sale. I would love to see, you call it a bonus, not even the commission, because you got to feed your family, but some sort of bonus based on the production of that franchisee. There's a brand, Melting Pot. This guy Colin does franchise development for him, but you could see he's constantly just calling the franchisees and building a relationship with him. He's not sales, that's development, and that's relationship building. That's actually caring about the people that you put into your system. So when development doesn't fall off in a brand, I see that as a benefit from support. And because we just gave great advice, Gene is going to tip us as well. Charles, can you put our Venmos in the chat? Because
I don't have a Venmo.
I don't either. Well, that's it. It was a great, lively conversation. I appreciate everybody paying attention, and hopefully we gave you some value on this Ask Us Anything. On the next one, we'll have a specific topic. Look for the email. We're doing these every 2 weeks. This is another episode of FranX.